Hallelujah. Good evening, good morning, good night, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome back to Voice in the Wilderness. And I'm Maxie. I am your teacher for today. We've been in this study. Are you in or are you out? Focusing in on getting the correct perception, getting the right understanding, putting things start already, right? In the correct perspective. Okay? And to do that right off the bat, we have to understand, we have to know certain things. One of the things we have to know, and it doesn't matter what anybody else says, it doesn't matter what anybody else does or thinks. This is as truth, this is as the truth, the God's truth as you can ever hear. Before, listen to what I'm saying, people. Before we were even created, God is, He was, and He will always be. Before the world was created, before Genesis 1 verse 1, He was here. And just the mere fact, just by the mere truth that God existed before us, that means everything about God and everything that God stands for and everything that God means and He is and He says, everything was there, was present with Him. Grace was present with Him. Grace did not come, and I want to say this again, grace did not come, did not appear at the birth of Yeshua. Even though John the Revelator makes mention that He was full of grace and truth. Well, listen, if we're talking about the same Jesus that I'm talking about that I call Yeshua, He has no choice but to be but to come with in full grace and truth. He has no choice. Why? Because this same John the Revelator, earlier in that first chapter in John, declares that in the beginning, He was the Word, He was with God, and He was God. So the idea that we have been for generations and for eons of time taught, and we bought into the misnomer that it's only when Jesus appeared, grace came into play. There was no grace in the Torah or the Old Testament. That God over there was a hard, mad God. Didn't give people opportunity, didn't have no grace and mercy. It's only when Jesus came. It's only when Jesus appeared. Grace appeared with Him, full of grace and truth appeared. Think about that. If we say we believe the God of the Bible, and for the Jews or the Jewish people, most of them, a lot of them, think the God of the Bible is etched between Genesis and Malachi. For the Messianics and the Christians and all the people who believe in Yeshua, they believe the Bible is from Genesis to Revelation. So I am covering all of you all of that, because the goal of this ministry what's in my heart is to show forth God, is to show forth Yehovah, is to show forth Him in all His glory. Not, see, I don't care nothing about me, because I could be here today and gone tomorrow. So can you. So can the next man or woman or child. So it's not about me. It's not about you. It's not about bishop whoever and pastor whoever and evangelist whoever and prophets whoever. It's not about none of us. And once we get to that point, once we get to that mentality, which I believe we have to come to, because when I look at the world, I see the madness. I see the nonsensicality that's taking place. I don't know if that's a word, but if it is, sounds good. I see the deception, the lies, the cheating, the murders, the rapes. You hear about it in the news. The corruption from top, from the king to the pig pen, the cow pen, from the king, from the palace to the plain. Mankind, humanity, have become corrupted because we have chosen to disregard He who was always here and what He stands for and His instructions. We have chosen to lay His stuff aside and elevate our stuff. We elevate our laws, our principles, our mentalities, our idioms and ideologies. And last week, in the last study, we went into Romans chapter 6. And we talked about some things. If you don't know, you need to look for it. I just uploaded it. As a matter of fact, after 5 days, 6 days, something like that, I just uploaded it yesterday. So go and listen to that. That will bring you into this. Or if you hear and you listen to this, when you finish listening to this, go back and listen to that. And as I thought about the heart of God, yesterday, God ministered a word to me, and I want to share it with you. Because this is as true as you can get anywhere. God was here before you and before me, before the first man. Right? Listen, and I've said this subsequently in many of the topics that I have on the channel. So you could go back and listen to any one of the topics and you may hear it. But I've said it continuously and I will continue to say it because it's true. He looked at the world. He saw it was nothing. Listen, it was nothing. The world we see today was I like to say it was a lump of nothing. And it was in His heart to create something out of nothing. And as we go on into the study, we will understand when God speaks, what is He standing on? What is the essence of God? What's in His heart? Because as I've said subsequently, As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, according to the Proverbs. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, according to the gospel, Yeshua in the Gospels. For where your treasure is, there also is your heart. Also in the Gospels, out of the mouth of the man Jesus, or I call him Yeshua. And from the heart, or from the mouth, comes the issues of life. And like I've said, if God is telling you that out of that issues that you have eventually comes out of your mouth. In other words, you speak about them. You discuss them. Okay? You talk about them. Guess what? That same principle is with God. The issues in his heart, he speaks about them. Right? So, he created everything. And I've said that when we look at Genesis 1, chapter 1 and chapter 2, this is what we find. The earth was a lump of nothing. Just, I don't know, I can't give you a shape. It was just mishmash. And God began to separate and create. He began to, like a painter, he began to paint mountains and oceans and valleys and trees and birds and animals and fishes. And he's painting. And after he creates everything, he put the sun there and the moon there, put all the stars in the sky. After he created all of this magnificence, he said, let us make man, and as I like to put it, as I like to say it, let us make man like us, according to how we perceive things should be. And so when God created us, he didn't create us to be a human unto ourselves, to be gods unto ourselves. He gave, listen, we discussed that in the last teaching. He gave us dominion. He gave it to us. God is not an Indian giver. No pun intended. But God is not somebody who gives something and then take it back. But he will if he deems it necessary to. So he creates everything. And then he creates the man. And he takes them, listen, he didn't ask them, I don't know how it went, how the man got in the garden. I'm just going to go with the English narrative and just let the chips fall where they, and people want to argue about little dots and little fine points. I don't look at those things. I look at them, but to me they're insignificant. He takes the man, according to the narrative in Genesis 2, and puts him in the garden. God, takes the man, after he created the man, and put him in the garden. So the man got in the garden because God put him there. The man didn't just walk in the garden and say, this is mine. No. God puts the man in the garden, and God tells the man, he gives the man instructions. That, to me, reeks of, I'm the daddy. I created you. As a parent, right? If you're a parent out there listening, you can follow me. I'm the dad. That's the mom. We created you. Here, you run around the house. Feel free to run around the house. When you do stuff, we say, no, don't do this, don't do that, don't do, that's our role. Why? Because humanly speaking, we created the child, the son or the daughter. We created that, humanly speaking. So God puts the man in the garden and then gives the man instructions. And what happens? God even gives the man a wife. And what happens? God puts the man, before he gets his wife, God calls, brings whatever happened, got all the animals. You know the narrative, you know the story. But he brings the animals, presents them to the man, and tells the man, hey, have at it, name them. And the man went, boop, 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 boop. The man was like, woo! Did he know he was God? Did he know he was like God? Did he think about, wow, look at what I just accomplished. I am like God. I naming things. Well, you only name things because you were given that responsibility or that authority. So, your authority, our authority doesn't come because we were born. Our authority comes because in his good heart, in his good nature, in his good will, he gave it to us. Okay? Now we're going somewhere. And what happens? He puts the man to sleep. He creates the man's wife. The man at this point in time has done nothing except name the animals. And probably, well, were there weeds and were there shrubs? Were there dry branches? Nobody knows. But he was serving in the garden. The man was servicing the garden. That's what his job was. The man in Genesis 2 created nothing. Okay? The man didn't even create his own wife. And then when the woman comes and she was deceived, something happens, and that's what we've been talking about. Are you in or are you out? Do you understand that we are not gods, small ones or big ones? God never told us we were gods. It's, I like to call it the other side. The other side deceived the woman. The woman, all of a sudden, so the fruit is good to eat. Because after all, when I eat the fruit, I will be like God. I will know some stuff. Yeah, you know some stuff, but you can't do nothing. You can't create nothing with the stuff that you know. See, there's the difference between knowledge and wisdom and understanding. Okay? Knowledge, wisdom, and understanding has to work together. Earlier in the session, as we began, I said to you, God spoke some words to me yesterday. And I want to release this word. I want to release it. And it's along these lines. See, when God created us, He gave us dominion. He wanted us to have dominion so we could take care of the things we need to take care of. Okay? But when we abandon our responsibility by becoming disobedient, see, the fact that the woman had this conversation with the other side, and she realized that if she eat of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, she will be like God. Having a conversation with the evil inclination doesn't cause you to be disobedient. It can, but that's not the cause of the disobedience. The cause of the disobedience comes from within. So there's something within us that causes us to latch on to disobedience, okay? And when we did the word study on the word man, in Genesis 1:26. And God said, let us make man. When we did the word study on that man, we realized that, wait a second, in this word, it's man, even though God said it's very good. See, nothing exists in life. Nothing. Not me, not you, not even God exists as all positive. Or everything is good and peaches and cream. Nothing exists like that. Everything, there is positive and negative. There is balance and counterbalance. There is weights and measures. Okay? You know what they say? What's one of the laws? This is physics. Wasn't a physics into physics so much. Chemistry was my thing. Human biology was my thing. But to every action is an opposite and equal reaction or something like that. You know, people call it karma. The narrative in the scripture is you reap whatever you sow. So and the farmers understand this. If you plant an apple seed, you cannot get a grape tree. If you plant a grape seed, you cannot get an apple tree. If you plant a mango seed, you cannot get an apple fruit, and so on. And we all understand these principles. There are many people who don't believe it. There are many people, and those people pursue evil, right? Those people pursue things like, they want to overrun other people. They want to overrun things. Everything is for themselves, right? Whether it's money, whether it's power, whether it's influence, everything is about them and their family, and they want to take care of their responsibility to their family and to their wife and their husband and their children. And so they don't care how they do it. If they have to steal, kill, and destroy, that's what they will do. As if the principle of karma, the principle of what you sow, you're going to reap, the principle of to every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. A lot of people in society operate as if these things are not true. And sometimes the people that operate know that they are true, but they don't really care about when it comes to reaping. You see what I'm saying? As long as they keep their benefits, as long as they keep their status, as long as they keep their money, as long as they keep their power, as long as they keep their corruption, as long as they keep their evil, they can worry about the results or the repercussions later on, right? And some of them even think they could always find a way of escape. So, well, you just rambling on, man. You're not talking scripture. No, I am speaking scripture. I'm talking about the heart of God. I'm talking about the word of God, the narrative that God is saying, hey, you're missing it. It's not about you. It's about me, God in heaven. I created you and I set you in a place. Listen, I gave you every single thing you needed to accomplish the job that I asked you to accomplish. And I put it this way. A husband and a wife do their thing. The wife gets pregnant. She delivers a baby 9 months later. And so for years, the husband and the wife work. They love each other. They love their baby. They take care of the child. They feed it. They clean him up when he poop. They clean him up when they teach him right from wrong. All kinds of stuff, right? They, as normal parents would do. And then when the child grows up and becomes a man or a woman, mature, They decide, okay, wait a minute, whatever, they turn 18 or 20 or whatever the age of masculinity is or femininity, whatever the age of maturity is. They say, wait a second, Dad, this is now my house. You all can't, I'm running things here. I'm going to tell you what's right and what's wrong. And I'm going to make you do what I want you to do because it's now my house. Well, wait a second. For 18, 19, 20 years, we bathe you, change your clothes, buy clothes for you, spend all this money, probably send you to university, pay all them. We did all this stuff for you, and then you will just decide, well, we don't matter no more. This is not our house. This is your house. Well, which one of you parents out there? Which one of you parents out there going to sit back and allow that to happen? I don't know which parent would sit back and allow that to happen. Most parents I know would be like, no way. You better get out of my house because this is my house. I'm talking about the Genesis story here. I'm talking about the Genesis story. My house, my rules. You continually break my rules and you want to live in my house? No, sir. No. In the human, in humanity, that doesn't happen. Why do we think God is going to allow it? Why do we think God is different? Is God a human? No. He told Isaiah, my ways are way higher than your ways, bro. The way I think is way higher than the way you think. You can accept stuff. It's stuff I ain't accepting. So, in the garden in Genesis 3, hey, this is my house. Where are you? Oh, who told you was? Oh, because you listened to the voice of your wife. And we talked about that. So, grace that we say only came with Yeshua or the Christ or Jesus, the Messiah. Grace was even before God said, let the waters, do their stuff in Genesis 1. Before that, grace was because God is a God of grace and mercy and kindness and jealousy and anger and love and all of that kind of stuff. So what are you saying? What are you saying, Maxie? I'm saying, unless we come to the realization that this life that we are living in, this house that we are dwelling in, doesn't belong to us. This is somebody else's house. And our responsibility is to take care of it the best way we can. But how can you take care of something if you don't know what to do? Which leads us into the word that God gave me to minister today in this session of, are you in or are you out? This is the word. God said, we were created to rule, to have dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, and all these things. But we have to rule those things with justice and mercy and kindness and goodness and patience and all those things that Paul talks about in Galatians, which we know as the fruit of the Spirit. See, God put us here because he expected us to rule with those things, with those intrinsic values, if you will. But when the virus took over the hard drive in Genesis 3, The only way for us to clean ourselves was to understand it's gonna be rough. See, because before that fall in Genesis 3, remember I said God did everything for us. He created everything and then he put us there. And all we have to do is take care of it. Slap the serpent back, tell him, hey, I don't want to have no conversation with you. Go back to where you belong. Go back to being over there. But the serpent was being a serpent. That's what he is. He was the wisest animal in the wild, among the wild animals. We are not animals. We are human beings. Diabolically different from animals. We are in charge of the animals. We can't have the animals being in charge of us. But that's what he did. That's why, we talk about the animalistic nature or the animal nature of human beings. That's where that came from. Because we bought into the lie that if we ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that would make us be like God. That would make us, put us in our upper echelons. When it was never meant to be like that. And so God kept it the way he designed it. What did he do? Okay. So you God now. No, you're not. Because I still run the show. I still put you out of the garden. I still curse the serpent. I still tell the wife. I still tell the woman her repercussions for her error. I told you the repercussions for your error. And I'm still in charge. I'm still giving instructions. So you're not in control of nothing. But you have to learn now. You have to understand that. Once you understand that I'm still the boss, this is my house, and you still have to live by my rules, right? If you get that in your thick skull, as the old folk would say, you're going to be all right. So Paul, in Romans chapter 6, which is where we are going after 30 minutes, we know getting there to the start. The ramble was kind of long today, but it's okay. It was a good ramble. I needed to do it. So we go into Romans 6, but before we go there, I want to read what God spoke to me. I want you to hear it. God said, we were created to rule. Yes, he gave us dominion. But we were supposed to have dominion with justice and mercy and kindness, with all of those things. That's how we were supposed to govern. And then he asked the question, how then can we rule righteously or with mercy and kindness when we disregard or when we don't know what his rules are? See, a parent teaches his son or daughter right from wrong, or he's supposed to. Train up the child in the way that the child should go, so that when the child is old, the child will not depart from that way. So a dad and a mom is supposed to instill these fundamental truths to a child as the child grows up. What's right, what's wrong. Teach them, let them know that God exists. God is watching. God is writing everything down. He's taking notes. Right? So when that child grows up, the child shouldn't come to the place of saying, hey, mom, dad, you know what? This is my house. No, you'll get out. Right? The child shouldn't come to the place as the prodigal son did, where he said, listen, dad, I know you've been saving up all my money, so give me my money. I want up out of here because you're too strict. You're too strict. I want to go out there and be wild and be rambunctious and sow my royal oats and all that kind of stuff. How can you have dominion? You man, you woman, how can you have dominion over the things that God put you to have dominion over when you don't even know the way you have to exercise this dominion. You have no clue of how you're supposed to exercise it. Or the clues you have are clues that you develop from other people, not from God. You see God's rules and listen. The human being looks at God's rules and say those rules are barbaric. Those rules are horrendous. Those rules are they're nasty. I don't want to live. I don't want them rules. Them rules are no good. You go so far as to say the rules are null and void. That's what we've done. Yet still, we want to rule with mercy, justice, kindness, righteous. How can you? That is ludicrous, people. That right there is ludicrous. For you to think that you can be just and be honest and be integrous and be upright and be merciful and be kind and be gentle and generous, and you could be all of those things, but you have no idea of what those things mean from the God perspective, because you question God. God is barbaric. He don't know what he's doing. Wait a second. How did this thing happen again? How did this happen again? Did you bring you into the world? Did you create you and brought you into the world? See, that's what these scientists, that's what these fictitious, that's what these liars and cheaters and stealers do. They get you to buy into a lie. And you buy in so hard, you run with the lie and you spit the lie back out of your mouth. That's what we have done for generations. So how then can we rule righteously, going back to what God said, when we don't know, we don't hold fast to, we don't believe, or our perception of God's laws and rules and instructions are false perceptions or inaccurate perceptions? We said it barbaric. And we have been spewing this stuff for generations. All of a sudden, we do what Paul says in Genesis chapter 9. When the people said to Paul, after he gave his narrative, well, you will say to me, as a matter of fact, Paul was speaking rhetorically, said, well, you will say to me, why then is God mad at me when God knows that I am going to do something that's wrong? Why should he be mad at me? When that's what he knows. If he knows everything, if he's God, you can't be mad at me if you know I'm going to do something wrong. And you know what Paul's answer was? Who are you, man, to talk back to God? See, we have taken Paul, we have taken his letters, we have taken the things that he's trying to say, and we have twisted them into a corrupted knot. And that knot has been breeding corruption in us for generations. So I know half of you out there want to believe what I'm saying, but it's okay. You do you. I'm going to do what God expects. I'm going to try to hold on to God. Because I ain't holding on to you or to no other person. I don't care who you are. How can we rule righteously when we don't believe in God's law? His instructions is, how can we do it right if we think he is doing it wrong? Think about that for a second. We trying to establish communities. We trying to establish leaders. We trying to establish governments. We try to establish laws that we think are righteous, but we completely disregard the only righteous one, the only one who is good. Are you serious? How can you rule righteously when you yourself is being disobedient? And you just looking at yourself to get more righteous rules. You're not looking at a standard to develop a righteous rule. You're looking at yourself. I don't agree with that righteous rule. I'm going to now create a righteous rule. Wait, really? And I've said this before. I heard this during my paramilitary training. It says, he who is best to obey, that person is best to command. Why is this important? Because just look at Jesus. Just look at the Messiah. Just look at Yeshua. Those three is the same person, okay? Don't get it twisted or not. I'm talking about the same person in three different ways. Some people call him Jesus, some people call him Yeshua, and some people believe he's the Messiah. He who is best to obey, that person is the best person to command. When you read Philippians 2:5, 6, 7, you realize that's exactly what it is saying. Jesus was the best, he is the best person to obey. So obviously, he is the best person to command the army. He is the best person to be in charge. If you don't want to do what he says, then you, my friends, are in trouble. Not he, you, me, if we don't do what he says. He said, I didn't come to erase anything. I didn't come to nullify anything. That's not what I came to do. I came to do everything. I came to show you how to do it. So, I'm pretty sure by now you are in Romans 6. And again, it's where do you start? We talked about these things in the last session. I don't want to go over them, but I had to start somewhere, right? So let's start in verse 11. It says, Romans 6:11 says, in Paul's letter to the Roman church, he says, it's Paul's letter. It's not the word of God. It's Paul's letter. Brilliant letter, by the way. Brilliant. He says, thus consider yourselves also dead to disobedience. The interpreter uses the word sin. I want to use disobedience because that's what sin is. Sin is transgression of the law. See, words are so important. And when you begin to misplace words and mishmash words and mix up words, everything becomes mixed up to you and to me. And we can't see clearly. But God wants us to see clearly. Sin is disobedience to God's instructions. That's what happened in Genesis chapter 3. They disobeyed God's instructions. God said, don't eat from the tree. If the day you eat from it, you shall die. And what did the woman say? I think I could be like God if I taste it and eat. So that's what she did. And then she gave it to the man, and he took it, and he ate. And my question is, did he do anything wrong? What was he supposed to do? But that's another thing for another time. Consider yourselves dead to disobedience. Why dead? Because Yeshua just showed you how to die. Physically and spiritually. He was obedient even unto death, the death of the cross. He was so obedient that it cost him his life. So, now consider your body dead to disobedience, but alive to obedience or to God the way Yeshua was. Verse 12. Therefore, don't let sin reign. Let's talk about that word for a second. What does it mean when something is reigning? Not R-A-I-N-G. Not R-A-I-N-I-N-G. Not raining like falling from the sky. What does it mean for something to reign? R-E-I-N-G. Or R-E-I-G-N. Sorry, my bad. What does that mean? That means that thing is like a king. That thing sits in a place like the king. So he's saying, don't let disobedience be king in your body. Don't let disobedience be king over you. He even describes you as a mortal entity. Don't let disobedience be a king over your mortal body. That you should obey the lusts of that king, the rule of that king, because there is nothing that exists without rules and laws and precepts and principles and statutes. You call it however you want to call it. No part of life, whether it's human life or plant life or animal life, exists without rules and regulations and all them things. Everything is governed. Paul is saying, don't let the king of disobedience rule your dead bodies. That you should obey the king of disobedience and his nasty lusts. He also says in verse 13, do not present your members or the parts of your body, which includes the very top of your head to the very tip of your toe, as they say. Do not give, do not bow, do not present your body, your members, hands, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, etc., 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 to disobedience as instruments of unrighteousness, but present everything to God as alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness. If you don't believe in God, if you don't believe God, if you don't know his word, if you don't know his instructions, all his ways, all his thoughts, all his heart, how would you be able to do that? How? You can come up with your own ideas about how you have to do that. No, you cannot, sir or ma'am. You cannot conjure up your own ways and present it to God and think that God is going to accept that. verse 14. He said, for sin will not have dominion over you. I would say it in a different way. For sin should not have dominion over you. Sin shouldn't have dominion over you. Sin should not be king over you. Your king is Yehovah Elohim, Yehovah Pt4. Your king is the word of God. It's the rule of God. It's the law of God. It's the righteousness of God. That's your king. And then he makes this statement that, wow, Paul says. And we want to get at this statement. Verse 14, second half says, for you are not under the law, but you are under grace. And we have taken that for centuries, generations, written books about grace, said all kinds of things. What does Paul getting at when he says you are not under law, but under grace? Does he mean that you don't have to obey the law? Because in other places, he disfigures or diffuses that thought that you shouldn't obey the law. Because he said the law is righteous and it's just. Why does Paul say the law is righteous and just? Because it's God's law. And God is righteous and just. So the law cannot be unrighteous and unjust. So what is this Paul talking about? For we are not under the law, but under grace. What does that mean? Because, as we don't get back to that, let's read 15 and see confirmation of what I just said about the law. He said, for you're not under the law, but you're under grace. What then? Shall we sin because we are not under the law, but under grace? He also says, may it never be. Shall we be disobedient to... Shall we be disobedient because we're not under the law, but under grace? He said, may it never be. You can't listen. If you died with Messiah Yeshua, you have to be obedient. You have to become obedient. You can't die for you can't accept his death for your disobedience and then continue to be disobedient. You can't do that. What does Paul mean? He goes on in I'm going to come back to verse 14. Slow your roll. I didn't forget. Let's continue reading a little more. In verse 16 he says, don't you know that when you present yourselves as servants and obey someone, you are the servants of whomever you obey. Whether it is disobedience, which leads to death, or obedience, which leads to righteousness. So, what is Paul saying when he says we are not under law, but under grace? Because he goes on to say we still have to be obedient. Here's a question I have for you to think about. What are we being obedient to? Or The better question is, who are we being obedient to? If you say we are being obedient, we have to be obedient to God, you will be correct. If you say we have to be obedient to Yeshua the Messiah, we probably will be correct also. Why we are correct? Because Yeshua, his claim, what happened in his life is that he was perfectly obedient. He was perfectly obedient to God. He was perfectly obedient to the Father. What did he obey? He obeyed everything the Father said, including every scripture that is written. Whatever scripture that is written that was applicable in his lifetime, he obeyed. Whatever scripture that was written that was applicable after he died, he still obeyed. Why was he perfect in his obedience? Because he is the Word. He was the Word, and he forever will be the Word. And the Word cannot be disobedient to the Word. The Word of God cannot be disobedient to God. The Spirit of God cannot be disobedient to God. There is no disobedience in that Trinity, in God, in the Godhead. There is no disobedience in God. God cannot disobey his own self. Why? Because he is God. Listen, I cannot make this point any more vigorously. God cannot go against his own self. Even Yeshua said, a house divided cannot stand. And God is not divided. Whether it's the Father, whether it's somebody saying he comes from the Father, or whether it's a spirit saying he comes from the Father, cannot be divided. So what is Paul talking about? Because you're not under the law, but you're under grace. See, because grace has been there all the time. This grace that Paul is talking about is not grace. I would venture to say it's not the grace of Yeshua, because Yeshua was the Word. He is the Word. He was there in the beginning. So grace was there in the beginning. Grace has been there all the time. So we will always, listen, we were always under grace. And some people will say, are you crazy? I'm not. When God created the man in the garden, grace was present. When the man sinned in the garden, the man being the female man, the woman, when she sinned in the garden, grace was present. We were always under grace. So what is this whole thing about not being under the law but being under grace? Here's what Paul is saying. Going back to what God said, we were created to rule with grace. With grace. Grace contains justice, mercy, kindness, righteousness. This is who grace is. Love. This is who grace is. Grace is grace. Grace is all of those things. And that's how we were supposed to rule. But we disobeyed. And we were booted out. And Paul is saying, seeing that we were booted out, and now this man came and died for our disobedience, and he did it so perfectly that he gives us an opportunity. If you believe in what he did, you have the opportunity now to go back to the garden, if you will. Well, God said you can't come back. No, you cannot come back to the garden in the condition that you left the garden in. You can't come back to the garden in sin. You have to rid yourself of that disobedience, and then you can come back to the garden, or come back to the kingdom, or come back to God. Are we hearing? Are we hearing? How do we do that? You know, how do we operate? See, what Paul is saying is we're not under the law because we are supposed to rule within the law. See, we are supposed to rule within the law because there is nothing has been without the law. There is nothing has been outside of the law. Remember I said, nothing that exists in life, in humanity, in spirituality, in emotionality, in mentality, nothing exists all good or all bad. No, everything in life exists in balance. Okay? And we were created to operate, to live, to have dominion in that balance. That's what grace is. Not too hard, not too soft. Not too soft, not too hard. In balance, because God hates, listen, a false balance. If you're too hard, if you're too soft, you gotta be balanced. That's what justice is. Just look at this and listen. We have these concepts all around us, people. What is the symbol of the justice system? It's just two scales that looks even on both sides. It's a balance. And we have to operate in that balance. How can you operate in that balance if you don't believe that the balancer, if you don't believe in the balancer, if you don't believe that two weights have to have something swinging on to keep them balanced, how can you operate? How can you be just if you don't believe in balance? That your balance is unbalanced. You disregard the balancer. You disregard the one who sets the standard, and you create your own. This is where we've gone wrong. You kick your parents out of the house, and you tell the parents, you're in charge. Where does that happen? Tell me which tail wags which dog. Tell me which cart pulls which horse. Please, somebody. How do we operate? So what Paul is saying here is, we were always under grace. We have to come to that place where we can operate in the law in balance. Because God knows we would be at this place at this time, doing this crazy stuff that we do. Killing people, just just raping and pillaging cities and neighborhoods, just hating people. Is that, you know what old folks used to say? It's a dog eat dog world out there. We operating like animals. We eating each other up, not literally, but metaphorically. Go to Deuteronomy 4 and 27. Let's go to Deuteronomy 4. Are you there? Deuteronomy 4. Not 4 and 27, sorry. Just go to Deuteronomy 4. And we're going to kind of read, we're going to read some words, and then we'll get to 27 through 31, right? Here is the man Moses, who is leading a couple million people, trying to instruct them, trying to teach them, you know, the ways of God. He says in Deuteronomy 4, verse 1, "Now, Israel, listen to the statutes, to the ordinances which I teach you, to do them." Why do you listen? You listen to obey. "That you may live." Why do you listen to obey? So that you will live. "That you will go in and possess the land which Yehovah, your Elohim, the Elohim of your fathers, gives you." He says, don't add, don't take away, that you may keep the commandments, that you may listen, that you may listen and obey. It's all about listening and doing. Verse 5. Back up. Verse 3. He says, "Your eyes have seen what Yehovah did because of Baal Peor. For Yehovah your Elohim has destroyed all the men who followed Baal Peor from among you." See, we don't think that God is alive and watching what is going on. We don't believe that God is holding people accountable for what they do. We think everything is a free-for-all, and murderers getting away with murder, and rapists getting away with rapes, and corrupt people getting away with corruption. Guess what? This is nothing new. People have been trying to get away with all these things from the beginning. And God is saying here, I got this. I see who is doing what. Guess what? Your role is not to be God and go out there and take revenge, right? What did the apostle say? "Vengeance is mine. I will repay, saith Yehovah." What is your role? Verse 4. "But you who were faithful to Yehovah your Elohim are all alive today." If you remain faithful, if you remain obedient, chances are you will be alive. He goes on to say, verse 5, "Behold, I have taught you the statutes and the ordinances, even as Jehovah my Elohim commanded me." Verse 6, I'm kind of going through, all right? "Keep therefore and do them." Here's a question. Why is Moses so adamant about them following these instructions, holding on to these instructions, doing these instructions, if generations down the road, they are not going to be crucial? They're not going to be important. God is not going to be requiring anything from them. God is not going to want them. Here he's insisting you have to do and keep and follow. And we are under the guise that was then and this is now, and we don't have to do and follow and keep. I say that's not God. God says it from the beginning. He means it from the beginning, and it doesn't end. Let's go down to verse 22. Sorry, let's go verse 22. Deuteronomy 4:22 says, "But I must die in this land. I must not go over the Jordan, but you shall go over the Jordan and possess that good land." Why is Moses not being able to go to the Jordan? Because you see, we think God is fooling around, right? And we think God doesn't mean what he says. And we think God is gone. He's taking a back seat in the back. He's over beyond. He's over there. He's not looking over here. And so we could do what we want over here because God is over there. He ain't seen what we're doing. He don't know what we're doing. He don't care. That's not true. Moses here disobeyed God maybe for one time, and I say that in air quotes because he was held accountable for that one time, right? When God told him speak to the rock, and instead of speaking to the rock, he hit the rock with the stick. We know about that, and that was the one thing that he did that God chastised him for, to the point where God said, "I don't want to hear it no more. Stop asking me. You're not going over there. I'm going to show it to you." What is that? Wait a second. Moses, I'm not going to take you over there. Hush your mouth. Stop raising it in prayer. You're not going, but I'm going to show it to you. What is that? That's grace. And in the last sessions, we talk about how grace is in the hand of the person who operates in the law. Grace, okay? Mercy, kindness, justice. These things are in the power, in the control of the one person who is operating in the law, like a judge or a police officer who pulls you over to give you a ticket and then decides, okay, I'm going to let you off, I'm going to give you a chance. That's grace. He didn't have to give you a chance. He could have just written a ticket. He didn't have to talk to you. He didn't have to ask you nothing. See, these things we take for granted. I have said before, I have been pulled over a couple times by the police. White, black, green, yellow, and blue. All of them. And there were instances when I was given a chance. And there were instances when I was not. There were instances when I drove off, my heart beating and thanking God. And there were instances when I drove off, thanking God and saying, man, I don't. Okay, God. You know what? I was speeding. Listen, we have to understand that. Grace does not, listen, grace does not operate outside the law. We're going back to Romans, and are we going back? Moses said, I have to die here. I cannot go into the land with you. That's my punishment. You will go and possess the land. I can't go. I won't be there with you guys. And then he gives this stark warning. Be careful, verse 23, Deuteronomy 4:23. Be careful lest you forget the covenant of Yehovah your Elohim. A covenant is a lifelong thing until the person dies. You or the other person. Be careful lest you forget the covenants of Yehovah your Elohim, which he made with you, and that you make yourself a carved image in the form of anything which Jehovah has forbidden you to. For Yehovah your Elohim is a consuming fire. That's one of his attributes. He is a consuming fire. He will consume those who perpetuate evil. I'm telling you, if you think he's not, I beg you to think again. If you perpetuate in evil, you will be consumed. He goes, we're skipping down, right? He goes on 26. Moses is invoking witnesses to what he's saying. He is deadly serious because he knows he's about to die. He's deadly serious because he knows the heart of these people. They didn't care what he said. They didn't care what God said. All they cared about was what they said. Does that remind you of where we are today? Does that remind you of how we operate today? Moses is saying, Deuteronomy 4, verse 26. I call heaven and earth to witness against you. Wait, not to witness for you, to witness against you. In the court of law, a witness is coming against you to say, you will soon utterly perish from off the land which you go over the Jordan to possess. You will not prolong your days on it, but will utterly be destroyed. Jehovah will cast you, verse 27. Jehovah will scatter you from among the peoples, and you will be left few in number among the nations where Jehovah will lead you away. Moses, this is an indictment, people. This is an indictment against the hearts of the people. Moses is telling them to their face, I know this is going to happen because I've done been with you all these years and I see how you operate. I'm prophesying here. Verse 28, there you will serve gods, the work of man's hands or men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see nor hear nor eat nor smell. You will knock on wood when you want something to go the right way. You will knock on wood. You will call on all kinds of crap. You will hold your beads and play with your beads. You will do all kinds. You will cross your but his hope, people. Verse 29. But from there you shall seek Yehovah your Elohim. Why are you going to seek him? Because hopefully you will remember your ways. You would look at your ways. You would look at yourself and say, wait a second. Something ain't right. I am not right. I've got to get myself right. I say that to myself every day. I got to get right. And I mean it, people. Listen, I mean it without a shadow of a doubt. I'm pursuing righteousness. I'm pursuing God. I have to get right. From there you shall seek Yehovah your Elohim, and you will find him when you search after him with all your heart and with all your soul. When you are in oppression, and all these things have come upon you in the latter days, you shall return to Yehovah your Elohim and listen to his voice. What is his voice? Why are you returning to him to listen to his voice? Is he going to say to you something different than he said to your ancestors, than he said to your forefathers? Is he going to say anything different to you? No, he's not. He's going to say the same thing, because he has been saying the same thing from the beginning. Return to me, obey my commandments, and you will live. Is what he's been trying to say from the beginning. And Moses is giving us hope. Moses is offering grace, if you will. He goes on to say, for Yehovah your Elohim is a merciful God. Did you hear that? Where did Moses come up with that term of endearment, if I would say, terms of endearment, to say to God? To say about God? Where did he come up with that? For Yehovah your Elohim is a merciful God. He is a God of grace. He's a God of mercy. He's a God of kindness. He's a God of love. Where did he come up with that? Because he knew God. He knew God's ways. He walked with God. God spoke to him face to face. Pani, pani. Listen, he was in a relationship with this God. He's a merciful God. He goes on to say, verse 31, he will not fail you, nor destroy you, nor forget the covenant of your fathers, which he swore unto them. Listen, he ain't even thinking about you. Isn't that funny? The way God thinks, and when you think about it, you see his pattern, right? God thinks about a people, but he points to one individual person. He created the world, and then he brought one man and one woman. But he's thinking about people, because he told the man and the woman, be fruitful and multiply. Then the world went wacky wild, and what happened? He thought about one man. The man was Enoch. Oh man, God loved Enoch. He's like, man, you're too sweet. I love you so much. I ain't leaving you in this world. Come with me. He took Enoch. Then the world continued to be wacky and wild and evil, Genesis 6. And he said, you know what? I'm still thinking about people, but I'm looking at one man. Not the man's children, not his wife, the man, Noah. And he pulls Noah, and he sets Noah aside, because Noah found what? Grace. What are we talking? Are you in? Really? Are you in or are you out? After Noah, it becomes Abram. He's still thinking about people, but he's looking for one man. It's Noah, it's Abram, it's David, it's his son Solomon. It's always one person. And then here comes Jesus, Yeshua, the Messiah. What is he thinking about? The whole world. He's thinking about you and me before we even get here. And verse 39 is where we'll end. We want to go into Deuteronomy further up the road. In verse 39, he says, "Know therefore today, take it to heart, that Jehovah himself is God, in heaven above and on the earth beneath. There is no one else." If we don't take that to heart, if we continue to think that we run things, oh man, we're in trouble. And I'm calling it as it is. We are already in trouble because we are beyond that point. There are people in high places, in leadership, running governments, running cities, running countries, running states and towns and what have you, who think they run things, who think it's all about them, who think they're in charge, and they are not looking to anyone else. Verse 39, Deuteronomy 4 and 29. "Know therefore today and take it to heart that Jehovah himself, he is God. He is Elohim in heaven and on the earth. There is no one else." And he goes on to say, "You shall keep his statutes and his commandments, which I command you today, that it may go well with you and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days in the land which Jehovah your Elohim gives you for all time." We're still in the book of Deuteronomy. Don't move. We go down to Deuteronomy 31. Moses is still speaking continuously. Moses, oh my goodness. Deuteronomy 31, are you there? We start in verse 25. "When Moses had finished writing the words of this law in a book, until they were finished, Moses commanded the Levites," verse 25, "who bore the ark of the covenant, saying, take this scroll," this book, this Sefer, "of the Torah, of the instructions," okay? Torah It's law, it's instructions, it's precepts, it's statutes. All of these things. That's what they are. Okay? And put them by the side of the ark of Jehovah your Elohim's covenant, that it may be there for a witness. The Torah, the instructions, are a witness to you and to me today. When we nullify them, when we disqualify them, when we cancel them, we are putting ourselves in the hot seat, and the fire is turned up way more than Nebuchadnezzar had it turned up. Okay? That's where we are today. Listen to what Moses says. These instructions are put there as a witness to us and our evil behavior. Why? Here's Moses. Verse 27. Deuteronomy 31 and 27 says, "For I know your rebellion and your stiff-neckedness." Is that a word? I don't know. It sounds good. Leave it there. "Behold, while I am yet alive with you today, you have been rebellious against Yehovah. How much more after my death?" This is an indictment, people, on society at large. And, you could say, well, that was the children of Israel. But you say you believe in Yeshua, right? You say Jesus. I believe in Jesus. What does Paul say? Paul says, if you are in Yeshua, you are Abraham's seed. Are you not Abraham's seed? Does this not fall right into your lap? Sir, ma'am. Oh no, we're not Abraham's seed. Yes, you are, because you believe in Yeshua. You can run from it all you want. This is the word. This is Yeshua. This is the Yeshua. Yeah. Speaking. Moses is saying, you have been rebellious from day one. I am alive. I'm living with you. I'm leading you out. And you are constantly rebellious. I'm alive. You think I'm going to die and you will all of a sudden change? No, he said, you expose yourself already. He says, I know your rebellion and you're stiff-necked. While I'm alive, you were like that. You have been rebellious against Yehovah from the get-go. How much more are you going to be rebellious after I'm gone? How much more? God ain't stupid. Okay, people? He's not stupid. He's not crazy. And he continues, assemble to me all the elders of your tribes and your officers, that I may speak these words in their ears, and call heaven and earth to witness against them. Everybody is getting the same indictment. Leaders, governors, presidents, kings, rulers, mayors, city council people, everybody in leadership, every human being, because every human being is potentially a leader. Me, you, Bebe, Tete, Wewe, Hippie over here, everybody. It applies across the board. Verse 29, Deuteronomy 31 and 29. Because I know that after my death, you will utterly corrupt yourselves. Wow. Utterly corrupt yourselves. Man, Moses have a way with words, people. Not just corrupt yourselves, but utterly corrupt yourselves. It's like you're going to take corruption beyond boundaries, beyond measures, beyond standards. You're going to continually establish new standards of corruption. That's what Moses is saying. For I know that after my death, you will utterly corrupt yourselves and turn away from the way which I have commanded you, and evil will happen to you in the latter days. Moses says that twice in the past few passages that we have read. Moses keeps talking about the latter days. And people could interpret days as the days to come. Well, if I'm reading it, it's the latter days. It's the days to come. It's still coming. It ain't here yet. Because I'm alive. When I'm gone, guess what? It's still coming. Or as I think Nehemiah describes it, it's not Nehemiah, sorry, Ross Nichols. He describes it as, it's coming. So it's kind of like I'm in front and those days are coming from behind. It's coming from behind. It's kind of Hebraically how it's projected, how it's seen from a Hebraic perspective, right? It's not futuristic. It's not past either, but it's coming. So it's future, but it's what ghost of future days past, ghost of my girlfriend's future days past, or something like that. It was a movie, but it's like it hasn't come yet, so it's not past, right? It's not present. It's to come, and that's how the future is depicted from the Hebraic perspective. It's the days that's coming from behind. It's coming. But I'm ahead of those days because guess what? If I die, I don't see those days. So you see what I'm saying? It's behind my back, but it's coming towards me. And it's coming like a freight train. It's coming like a freight train because corruption is running rampant. It's running rampant. And it's getting worse and worse by the day. He says, I know, and evil will happen to you in the latter days, because you will do that which is evil in Jehovah's sight, to provoke him to anger through the works of your hands. Not your thoughts, It's not your thoughts, it's what you do. If you perpetuate on thoughts, you just might end up doing them. Okay, and a couple sessions ago, we talked about what Paul means, or whoever said, take your thought captive and put it under the microscopic examination of the word. So grace is forever there. Grace is forever there. Let's go back to Romans. Right. Let's go back to and why did I go to Deuteronomy? Because here Moses is explaining to the people there, right? What they were going to become, what they were going to be like. And Paul is saying, you're not under the law, you're under grace. But how can you operate in grace if you have no concept of what the law is? Because grace operates in the law. If you don't know how to do the right thing, how can you do the right thing? Right? And you can't use the excuse that you didn't know what to do, as he said in Romans. So when we are taught that the law is null and void, that we don't have to do the law because he came and he nailed the law to the cross, and all kinds of nonsense, all kinds of lies that sounds brilliant. And believe me, I believed it at some point. It's not so. So how do you operate? What is grace, and how do you remember I said grace is in the hands, listen, grace is in the hands of the person who is in charge of keeping the law. Like a judge, or a police officer, or a president, or a magistrate, or a lawyer, or somebody like a king or God. Somebody who is in charge of watching the law, keeping the law. That person is in the position to offer grace. If you have ever been pulled over by a police officer for whatever the reason, and the police officer let you go, let you slide, yeah, okay, I got you, no problem. Don't let it happen again. And keep you moving on. Guess what the police represent? Guess what the police officer represent? The police represent the law. They are the standard. So they uphold that law. So when you break the law, they pull you over. And because the law is in their hands, they could say, okay, I'll not give you a ticket. It's their choice. It's their choice. And if you fight it, you go up to another person who looks at the law, who is the magistrate or the judge. Oh, okay, I'm giving you a ticket and you're fighting the ticket. Let's go to the court, where the law is now even exponential, right? It's even bigger. So we can see how you're going to fight there. And it's up to that person because that person has the law in their hands. He's looking at the law, reading the law, interpreting the law, and deciding whether you did break the law or not. You were wrong or you were right. Or, you know what? I'll let you slide because I see where you probably, you shouldn't have done what you've done, but I understand why you did it. So I'll let you go with a warning or on probation or something. And all these things we are very familiar with because it happens around us all the time. So when he says, how do you operate under grace but within the law? Because you can't operate separately. See, our teachers, our pastors, and our evangelists and prophets, they've tried to create a separation between grace and law. But that's false. There's no separation. Grace is there because of the law. That's why Paul asks a question in Rome. We're back in Romans 6, right? That's why he asks the question, what then? Shall we sin because we are not under the law but under grace? No, you can't. May it never be. God forbid. And then he ratifies the whole situation by explaining it this way. He says, do you not know that when you present yourselves as servants and obey someone, if we are under the perception that because we're under grace, we don't have to obey nothing, we don't have to obey the law, we don't have to look at the law, we don't have to know the law, we don't have to be obedient to the word of God or to what he says. If we are under that perception, that's wrong. That's a false perception. And that has been stuck in our brain and we operate by that. But that's not how it's supposed to be. Because here it is, he explains. Do you know that when you present yourselves as servants to obey something or someone, You are the servants of whom you obey. So if you obey disobedience or sin, you're a servant of sin. Well, a servant of sin cannot be a servant of God. See what I'm saying? You can't serve two masters. You will hate one and love the other, or love the one and hate the other. You cannot serve God and money. You cannot serve sin and sinless. You cannot serve disobedience and obedience. No, you can't operate like that. A house divided within itself can't stand. And then he said, whether it's sin to death, because we know the wages of sin is death, or obedience to, what did he say? Obedience to, not grace, obedience to righteousness. Even though you're operating in righteousness, you still need the lawgiver or the law upholder to apply grace to you that you continue living in righteousness. Why? Because we were all placed under that law of sin. Because we all were considered to be lawbreakers or disobedient or sinful people. Every single human being. So when you obey, that leads you to become righteous. And the judge who sits within the law, who knows the law, who is excellent at it, by the way, just so you know, we're talking about the lawgiver, the king. He says, you have grace. You have grace. And then verse 17, here's a kicker. He says, but thanks be to God that whereas you were bond servants of disobedience, you become obedient from the what? From the heart to the form of teaching to which you were delivered. Listen to that. We're going to end right in this verse here. He said, but thanks be to God that whereas you were bondservants to disobedience, you have become a servant to obedience from your heart. Why did he say that from the heart? Because that's the only place. Hear me carefully. That's the only place obedience comes from. It's got to come from the heart. It's not a fictitious thing, right? It's not I'm going to say that I will do it, but I don't do it. It's I'm going to say I will do it and then I do it. That's obedience, is that combination of knowing you will do it and then doing it. Not knowing you have to do it and then don't do it. Because it doesn't matter if I do it or not. It does. It matters if you say you will do it. It matters more if you say you will do it and don't do it, or if you say you will do it and do it. Because if you say you will do it and don't do it, that's sin, that's disobedience. But if you say you will do it and do it, that leads to righteousness. Oh God, we got to get this, people. From the heart. Listen. He said, thanks be to God, whereas you were bondservants of sin, you became obedient from the heart. Obedient from the heart, obedient to that form of teaching to which you were delivered. See, you were delivered from something to something. You were delivered from disobedience to obedience. You were delivered from that false teaching to the truth. So now you have to walk in that truth that you are currently delivered into. Verse 18, being made free from sin, you became bondservants. So you now serve righteousness. How do you serve righteousness? By being obedient. What are you being obedient to? The will, the word, the Spirit of God. And then verse 19, he speaks in these ways. I speak in human terms. Because of the weakness of your flesh. For as you presented your members to servants of uncleanness and to wickedness upon wickedness, even so now present your members as servants to righteousness for sanctification. So obedience leads to righteousness. Righteousness leads to sanctification. Righteousness leads to the process by which the one who sits in the law looks at you and says, grace. Keep going. Keep doing what you're doing. I give it to you. I see you moving. Keep flowing. Don't turn back. For when you were servants of sin, you were free from righteousness. What fruit then did you have at that time in the things which you are now ashamed? In other words, when you were doing unrighteousness, you were stealing, killing, raping, lying, cussing, shucking and jiving. You were doing all kinds of things unrighteously. And you were bearing fruit from that. Because like I said, that you sow, not I, but God, that you sow, that thing that you sow, you will also reap. If you sow seeds of murders and killings and rapes and stealings and whatever, that's what you're going to get coming to you, bro. Them trees growing all over the place. It coming. Okay? And I know for me, I can look back on my life and see some things that I've done. I'll be like, shame, shame. You know the commercial? Hey, listen, man. Listen, God is beautiful. God is awesome. But there's this commercial on the radio, and you heard about, the Game of Thrones, Walk of Shame. He said, shame, shame, shame. There's a point. You used to do things, the things you used to do, you turned away from those things. But you see, when you think about them now, you ashamed of them because you're like, oh man, what in the world was I thinking then? You can't go back and do those things because they brought shame, they brought death. You have to continue now in righteousness. By obedience, by being obedient. He closes verse 21 by saying, for the end of those things is death. But now you've been made free from sin, having become servants of God, you have your fruit of sanctification. That means you've been obedient. Your obedience is leading to righteousness. Ask Abraham. How was the righteousness attributed to him? Because he was obedient. It's the same thing. Grace was there. Grace says, I'm going to fall on you because you will be obedient. And you will teach your household how to be obedient, how to follow my way. Go read Genesis 18 is what he... And he closes off chapter 6 as if he closed off chapter 6. We all know it came in later on. For the wages of sin is death, but the free gift of God is eternal life in Messiah Yeshua. What does that mean, eternal life in Messiah Yeshua? Eternal life in the Word of God, eternal life in the obedience of Yeshua Messiah, eternal life as he was resurrected because of his obedience. You will also be resurrected because of your obedience, because grace is applied. Or don't you know, brothers, for I speak to men who know the law, that the law has dominion over a man for as long as he lives. Of course the law has, listen, the law has dominion over every single living human being. I'll tell you who has dominion over you, even beyond the law, is he who sits above the law. And when I say above the law, again, like Paul attributed to, is he is above the law, but he judges by the law. And I'm going to stop here because I want to roll into this teaching next week. But I want to just kind of give you a little look forward, a build up. And then we're going to start here in Romans 7. He said, oh, don't you know, brothers, for I speak to men who know the law. So he's speaking to Pharisees and Sadducees and people who know the law, right? And not just Pharisees and Sadducees, but he's speaking to men who are familiar with the law. The law has dominion over every man as long as he's alive. Physically, that is. Right? And he gives this example. Wait, I forgot something. There's a note I put here in Romans 17. Oh, I covered that. Okay. Let's go on. Okay, what's the note? We in Romans 7 and 2. He says, he makes a statement, like a headline. For don't you know, brothers, the law only has dominion over a man for as long as he's alive, as long as he's physically alive. And he gives an example of that. For the woman that has a husband is bound by the law to the husband only while he lives. If the husband dies, she is released from that covenant, if you will, from that covenant of marriage, if you will, and she could go remarry, right? That's what the law says. But if the husband dies, I just explained that, she is discharged from the law of the husband. Well, there's no law of the husband. That's the law of marriage, right? When a man marries a woman, he is bound to that woman for life until death do us part. It's all right there in front of us, right? So what is Paul saying? What is Paul saying? These are indictment leading questions, indictment leading statements. Paul is targeting our hearts, see? Let's go to Matthew. Should I end here? I'm thinking. Should we take it up? I'm going to read. Let's go to, I have a note here. Let me see what I note up. Let's go to Matthew chapter 19. Right? And let's read what Yeshua, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. Jesus. Oh, let's, that's the man right there, bro. That's the man right there. He says some things in this chapter. Let's read from verse 1. Matthew 19. Are you there? You there? Okay. I'm seeing you. I'm looking at you. I know you're there. Let's read. When Yeshua had finished these words, Matthew 19 and 1, he departed from Galilee and came to the borders of Judea beyond the Jordan. Great multitudes followed him, and he healed them there. The Pharisees, who's the Pharisees? Them people know the law, right? They know the law like crazy. So the law people, the lawyers, came to him, testing him and saying, is it lawful? Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason? Is it lawful? This is a big question. The people who know the law, the lawyers, come to the judge, the chief judge, the king, who is in disguise. The king in disguise. I don't know why I come up with these things, but boy, that was funny. The king in disguise, and they ask him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason? Hear the response of the king, the one who knows the law better than anybody else. Here's his response. He answered them, verse 4. Haven't you read? Wait, what are you talking about in the epistles? What are you talking about? Matthew, what are you talking about? Ephesians, Corinthians, Philippians, Galatians, Peter, John, James. What is he talking? Have you not read? That should spark some curiosity. Read where, sir? Have you not read that he who made them from the beginning? What is Yeshua referring to? The beginning. Even Yeshua knows. Excuse me. Take a drink. Excuse me. Coffee, just so you know. Yeshua knows. This is the lawgiver. He sits above the law. He knows. He said, haven't you read that he who made them from the very beginning? See, we think that it's all well and good. We could do whatever. God's still sitting in there. God say, I created it all. I'm still in the beginning and I'm waiting for somebody to respond in the manner that is appropriate, and I would just show them everything. But you all think you all gods. You all think you all run the show. You all think you all could do what you all want. And guess what? I'm still sitting and I'm still judging. I'm still weighing and I'm still watching. So you think you could chastise me? You can't chastise me. I am God. I created you. Remember Paul says in Romans 9? Who are you to talk back to me? Haven't you read, we're still in Matthew 19 and 4, that he who made them from the beginning, he made them male and female. Okay? That's just, I didn't say this. This is the biblical narrative that we are reading. He made them male and female. So you all there want to perpetrate something different? Okay, fire coming for you. So he said, verse 5, and said, for this cause a man shall leave his father and mother, and shall be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. He goes on, verse 6, so that they are no more two, but one flesh. Whatever therefore God has joined together, a man cannot tear apart. Whatever God, listen, whatever God says, a man cannot come and unsay it or undo it. A man, A created thing cannot come and change that, because that man does not sit in the seat of God. Only God can change what God says, and God does not change. Verse 7. We're going to back up a little bit. Verse 7. They ask him another question. See, they're trying to trick and trap and bring the law to the lawgiver. Why then did Moses command us to give her a certificate of divorce? Where did this divorce thing come from? In other words, this is what he said to them. Listen, this is an indictment on the human heart. This is an indictment to us as human beings. This is an indictment to us as created beings. This is not complimentary. This is not an excuse for you to do what you're not supposed to do. He said to them, Moses did this because of the hardness of your hearts, and allowed you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning, it has not been so. Should I end there, or should we continue? I will end there. And we're going to pick it up next week, right here. I threw out the question before. When the woman took of the fruit and ate, and then gave it to her husband, who had not eaten it at the time, did he do something wrong by taking? Did he cause sin, which many people believe sin came when he ate? I disagree. Because sin, according to the biblical narrative, sin came in by one person, or by one human being, or by one man. As the narrative says, it all depends on how you interpret that word, man. Some interpret it exactly as it was, as it says, man, being a male. I don't interpret it that way. The word man, when you look at the original word man, from where it was first used, it speaks of human beings. And if you follow that interpretation, then it would read that sin came in by one human being. And I think Paul or Peter definitively explain who that human being is, because I think it's Paul or Peter, and we'll go into that next week, said it was the woman who was deceived, not the man. Oh man, you all see. But let's end there. Let's end there. The indictment to us in this last verse that we're going to pick up from. He said Moses did that because of the hardness of your hearts. And Moses did that as an application of grace. I wish you were here. because our hearts are so hardened. We so insist on not doing what God says. We completely insist on doing what we want to do. Moses, because of that, fashioned an occasion to offer grace. Okay, guys, God, if I don't do this, you will all perish. Here, do this. And Yeshua explains further down the conditions under which you do it. So don't tell me that grace is separate from the law. Don't preach to people that grace operates outside the law. Don't do that. That's a lie. It's a lie. Turn your Bibles to Numbers 6. Every time I say that, I'm thinking Numbers 6, but I always go to Numbers 22 for some reason. But I know it's Numbers 6 and verse 22. Are we there? In closing, Numbers 6 and 22 declares these words. And Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and to his sons, saying, This is how you shall bless the children of Israel. You shall tell them, Jehovah bless you and keep you. Jehovah make his face to shine on you and be gracious to you. Jehovah lift up his countenance toward you and give you peace. So they shall put my name on the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Until next time, Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov, Buen Nuit, Buenos Dias, Buenos Tardes, Buenas Noches, Adieu, Arrivederci, goodbye, see you, peace.